what was the beginning? What is the first film you remember seeing in theaters?
Oh, the first film I remember seeing in theater, must actually be The Jungle Book. It was put up again in the theaters when I was a young child, and I saw it in the cinemas when it got re-released. But I think the most powerful cinematic memory from my early childhood has to be The Lion King, actually. Not a European film, but based on a European play. So I saw it, I was 5 or 6, and I saw it 3 times in the cinema. Bought it on VHS the day it came out, and I think my earliest memory of visual storytelling is the BBC adaptation of Narnia. I remember, like, I have vague memories, and my mother told me about me being 3 years old and way too young to watch it, but insisting that I had to see it, and I think that sparked my love for fantasy and also my love for cinema, actually.
And how did that evolve into a drive for filmmaking? How did that go on to inspire you to follow a filmmaking career?
So I think I actually, almost for as long as I can remember, I wanted to make films. When I was a young child, I wanted to become an actor because I thought they were the ones who made the film. Of course, they are also. But when I realized that there are someone who writes the screenplay, there's someone who writes the story, there's someone who directs, then I get moved more and more into that. So throughout my childhood, I wrote a lot of like fiction, like prose. Loved reading books as well. And then when I turned 11, 12, actually, that was when I started stealing my father's video camera and making small short films with my friends. So the very first real short film that I made, like a beginning, middle, and an end, I made when I was 12 years old. It was a James Bond parody, actually, and it was filmed in the same school that LARS IS LOL is filmed, actually, because that was the school that I went to as a child.
LARS IS LOL, of course, is a beautiful movie about a very relevant subject in the modern world, which is inclusion of children with disabilities in school environments. Do you feel that there's a lack of representation on such an issue? Do you think there should be more awareness?
So I think, in general, in Norway, where I come from, and in Denmark, where I live, to a certain extent, things have become much, much better the last 30 years. However, I think, the space for all of us is defined by the people who are at the very edges of what we could consider normalcy. So it's our ethical obligation to create good lives for every human being, whether or not they have Down syndrome or another disability or none at all. But so that's an ethical obligation in and of itself. But I also truly believe that by creating space for people who are the most different from the core of normalcy, so to speak, we actually create more space for everyone. So people with Down syndrome, people with other disabilities, people who are different in any sort of way, in my view, they really make the world richer for everyone around them. And I think it's not just our obligation, but we also do it for the whole of society when we create better lives for them. So I think Ibn Akli, who wrote the book that the film is based on, she is a special pedagogue, and this is a subject that is very close to her heart. And throughout working on the screenplay with her as my co-screenwriter and making the film, it has become a subject that is very close to my heart as well. And I truly believe that, if we create better lives for everyone who are different, then we create better spaces and better place for every human being. Yeah.
That is a really strong message. Now, of course, the movie, as you say, is adapted from a novel.
Right.
And what's the story behind that? How did you come to find the novel? How did the idea of making it into a movie start, and what's been the process?
So sometimes it feels like the novel came to me instead. It's been such a joy of my life to be able to make this film. And Ibn, who wrote the novel, we knew each other from high school. During the time that she was writing it, I'm living in Copenhagen, and she was living in Copenhagen at the time. So we reconnected while she was writing the book. We talked a lot about the story, and she asked me even before the book came out if I would consider making it into a film and reading it with that purpose. And when I read it, I was just so struck by the story. I really felt I could recognize myself in the subject and the themes, and also the characters. I had a period in my own school years where I did experience bullying, and I knew how devastating it can be. And for me, it became, it turned out okay. Some of the guys who bullied me ended up becoming my friends, and were actually acting in the films that I made when I was a teenager. But I know how devastating it can be for a child to experience bullying. And the difference between when I grew up and now is that when bullying happens online, it kind of can stay with you forever. When I was a child, the bullying happened in the schoolyard, maybe on the way back to home. But when I was home with my fantasy novels or watching films and writing books, then I had my free space. Now, with your phone in your pocket, it can follow you everywhere. So I was deeply moved by the story and by the characters and this friendship between Amanda and Lars, who has Down syndrome. And I laughed and I cried and I called Eben up and said, yes, let's do this. And we wrote the screenplay together. And we started in 2016 when the book came out, and the film came out last year. So it became a 7-year journey to make the film happen. And it wasn't always easy, but it was always joyful, actually. Doing the creative work, first with Eben, and then producer Caroline Hitland, and then all the other collaborators, especially Lily Winger-Smith, who plays Amanda, and Adrian Øvre Vestnes, who plays Lars. It has been the greatest joy of my life, really, to make this film.
How are you feeling about the awards itself? Are you feeling excited, anxious?
I think I'm feeling both excited and anxious. First and foremost, actually, I'm feeling very, very grateful, because just the recognition to be one of the 3 films selected to be nominated is such an immense honor in and of itself for me and for all of the cast and crew. And I think it's so special that the European Film Academy creates this space for the Young Audience Award, because with the European Film Club and now also the Young People's Jury, it really puts a focus on something that I believe is very, very important, because I think the stories that we tell for children and young people, they might be the most important stories that we tell, because it's such an influential part of our life. And if we do believe that films can change a life, and if we do believe that films can change the world, maybe just a little bit, then films for children and young people, they are the ones who can have even the most impact. So it's such an honor to be part of this, and to just be in the room with such amazing colleagues from filmmakers that I have looked up to my entire life.
Earlier on, and even in this question, you mentioned the idea of a movie sending a strong ethical message on top of storytelling itself.
Right.
How does that relate to your work? How does that feel as an obligation? And what would you say to any aspiring storytellers and filmmakers at home?
Well, that's a very good question, but it's also a little bit difficult one to answer, because for me, cinema is first and foremost an art form. It's a storytelling art form. So what I want to experience when I go into the cinema is to go into this world and have an experience of some sort, right? It can be sometimes it's the story, sometimes it's the images, sometimes it's just the mood of the film that draws me in. But to have an experience in the cinema, that's what I want to have. So I think my obligation, I feel, as a filmmaker, is that first. I want to give an experience to the people watching the film, and hopefully it will move them and create all sorts of emotions, and hopefully it will be an experience that they enjoy and can take home. And the message or the ethical side, it's something that must come perhaps as a result of that. I think that my obligation as a director is first and foremost to the art form, to create what I would perceive as a good film, a film that I would enjoy to see. And then I think because film is such a powerful medium, and because storytelling is such a powerful art form, then you have an obligation. Because since the stories we tell do have an impact, then we must ask ourselves, okay, so if I'm so lucky to create a film that someone wants to see, what kind of impact do I want to have? So I think it's not where I start. I don't feel like I start with a message. I start with a feeling, and then whatever message, it really needs to be a part of who you are as a filmmaker, a part of how you view the world, and it kind of will happen automatically. I know that I know it's the same for Eben, who wrote the book. When we wrote the screenplay, we weren't thinking, oh, how can we create a powerful message as possible. We were thinking, how can we create a powerful film as possible? And then we were aware of our responsibility as storytellers. What message do we send out through the medium of film? And I hope that the people who see the film will have a great cinematic experience. And then maybe if some of them think a little bit more about how they treat their fellow human beings, because that's the subject of the film, right? And how they might create space for someone who is different than themselves. Or if they start thinking about, well, how am I expressing myself? Authentic, how do you say this is a difficult word to say in English. Authentically. How do I express myself true to the world, right? Then if just like 1 out of 1,000 in the audience makes a little bit of change, then that's beautiful. But I do think that first and foremost, you must create the film that you want to see yourself, right? And yeah.
And so, apart from, of course, creating a film that you yourself would want to see, what other tips and bits of wisdom and advice can you give to the young people at home that want to pursue a career in filmmaking, in directing?
I think experience is the greatest teacher. So, just like, I started making short films when I was around 12 and started writing screenplays and directing films, the more you do, the more you learn. So if you want to make a film, nowadays everybody has a camera in their pocket, and editing software is even freely available now, for like cost-free. And then, go out with a friend or do it yourself, make a little short 1-minute film or a 3-minute film, and then you have made something, and then you can look at it, and then you will learn from it. And of course, watch the films that you love, and explore cinema. It's such an amazing world, and I think find collaborators that you like to work with. If you meet someone and if you want to hang out with them creatively, that's a relationship that you should take care of, because filmmaking is a collaborative art form, and that's one of the things that makes it beautiful. So I think, make some short films, and then you'll learn something from it. Watch a lot of films and find out what you like, because that's part of you. What you love is part of you. And then if you're lucky to find someone that you like working with, stick together with them, and then it becomes even much more fun. And, much more, you will learn much more from it as well.
So if your life was a movie, what genre would it be? And who would you cast to play yourself?
Oh dear, I think there's this. I saw someone say one time, when I was a teenager, a friend of mine said that they wanted to live their life so it would be a good movie. And then I thought, well, then you don't know much about storytelling, because if it's a good movie, then there's a lot of resistance and horrible crisis and turning points that will devastate you. And it's like, so I think. If my life was a movie, I kind of hope it would be like a very boring one, because everything was just going so well. But life is not always like that. I think, what genre? That's a very good question. Maybe like I was going to say road trip, but I don't feel like I'm very much on the road. But maybe like a very long, slow coming-of-age film, where maybe one day when I turn 80, I will feel like, if I'm so lucky to do that, then now I'm coming of age. And then there's like the sequel, where it's like the last coming of age story. And who would play me? A friend of mine insists, and I hope that he's right, that it should be Michael Fassbender.
I can agree to that.
So if you're available, let me know, Michael, and give me a call.
Know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.